All of these people, busloads, have come from Belhaven, North Carolina, to the nation's capital.
That's right. And Hyde County.
And Hyde County, and Beaufort County. Rural health care is in a crisis, and we have to have our politicians recognize that. We have finally, with immense effort, broken through into the national news. We now have to say, produce or we will escalate. We already know what the next steps are. Biden believes that they do not even have to respond to this mayor walking 273 miles, and he walked every bit of the way. I've been with him two solid weeks. We started 2 weeks ago today. We've been with him all the way, but he has walked every step of this way because he's the most determined.
Yes, sir.
He is the most dedicated, and he is in the tradition of all of the great leaders of the people of the United States. And they taught us one lesson that this mayor makes plain to all of us, that brotherhood and sisterhood is not so wild a dream as those who profit by postponing it pretend. The mayor, he's the main event.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. Thank you. I, of course, want to thank everybody for coming out today. I know it's a long ride. I know you got up at midnight to get on a bus to come to Washington, D.C. I hate trips like that where I can't sleep. I like to sleep. I can't sleep. Okay.
They want to see you, Mayor.
All right. But anyway, I'm so deeply touched that so many people took their time to come here today. And I know we all came here today because of our hospital. We all know, we know firsthand that people are going to pass away. Portia Gibbs right here.
That's right.
This lady had chest pains. Her husband took her to the paramedic station in Swan Quarter for assistance. There was no emergency room in Belhaven. They were 25 or 30 miles from Belhaven. In the old days when we had an emergency room, she would have been in the hospital at an emergency room with an ER physician, with all of his medicines, all of his tools, within 25 or 30 minutes. Instead, she spent the last hour of her life in a parking lot at a high school waiting for a helicopter. Vidant Health is the reason this took place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Vidant Health is the reason this took place. And we're not going to let this kind of thing go on without saying something about it. Those executives sit there smug in the rooms when we see them and look at us as though we can't do anything. Do they see us today? They can do whatever they want to do, but guess what we can do? Whatever we want to do. Bob and I have walked about 540,000 steps. He's 75 years old, and he literally took 90% of the steps. He would wrestle my mom once in a while. He's got blisters all over his feet, and he kept right on pushing. About the third day, I asked him, I said, Bob, why are you walking with me? He said, well, the first day I learned that you're going to be on your own at times. You might be walking by yourself sometimes. And he said, I remember two men that walked for a cause by themselves. Both of them got shot. He said, I'm not going to let you walk by yourself.
That's right.
We're not ever going to let him walk by himself.
That's right. No!
So Bob is a friend of Belhaven, and he will always be known as a friend of Belhaven because he did walk with us the whole way. And we appreciate you, Bob. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Medicaid expansion is something that's very important. It's very important to rural hospitals. Rural hospitals struggle to make ends meet every year. They rely on foundations, they rely on charitable gifts to make it from year to year. Even more importantly, critical access rural hospitals struggle even more mightily because they're located in areas that are geographically challenged, where people didn't have care back before the Hill-Burton Act. So it's extremely important that in our country, critical access hospitals don't close because it certainly means people will die. We have a situation in Beaufort County with Vidant Health that they kind of have a monopoly.
That's right.
And they talk about Medicaid expansion having an effect, and it does have an effect. It's important because with the new Affordable Care Act, indigent reimbursements, people that can't pay, is falling, and Medicaid expansion was supposed to fill that gap. When the state of North Carolina didn't take Medicaid expansion, now you've got a situation where you have falling revenues and no revenues to replace them. So you've got a recipe for disaster. And to tell you how significant that is, our critical access hospitals, the doors are closed. But let's think about that for a minute. Vidant Health is a non-profit. Now, a non-profit is formed for the common good. A non-profit is an organization that's supposed to have a mission of good. A non-profit is not supposed to be put together to make unseemly amounts of money.
That's right.
Vidant Health in 2012 made $127 million. In 2013, Vidant Health made $109 million. They have $550 million in reserves. And they saw fit, and they looked me straight in the eye and said, we're going to close your critical access hospital. They closed a critical access hospital with $500 million in the bank, making over $100 million a year, and let people die.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Profits are more important to them than life. They have no interest in the people. It's all about profits. Vidant CEO David Herman makes over twice what our hospital lost. One man
That's right.
made over twice what our hospital lost. And he looked me in the eye and said, the hospital's losing too much money, we got to close it. He took emergency services away from 20,000 people.
That's right.
In a year that he made $100 million. That's wrong.
Wrong.
That's why you have laws for immoral people. He's immoral.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Biden's leadership is immoral. You don't make $100 million and close a critical access hospital.
That's right.
And we stand here with a Capitol in our background today to ask these men who are supposed to support us to stop this sort of thing. This is wrong. This is happening across the country. It's got to stop. And it's inspired us enough in Belhaven to walk 273 miles. I want to thank all the mayors and all the people that blew their horn at us. The mayors that were so supportive. One of the most touching things we had was near Cortland, Virginia. This man came by in an old pickup truck, backed up to us, said he heard about us, gave us $10. This man didn't have a lot of $10 to be giving away, but he wanted to help because he knows he's in rural America and he knows what's going on. And as a country, we cannot let these huge companies start taking our money, but then start taking our lives. Vidant Health needs to be dealt with. And somebody in that Capitol dome needs to make a phone call and fix this. I've got a letter I've written to the president. The president has had messages sent to him several ways. This is our letter.
And we hope to meet with him.
Dear Mr. President, I'm writing to request that you meet with the North Carolina NAACP President Reverend William Barber, Civil Rights legend Bob Zellner, previous Country Doctor of the Year Mr. Charles Boyette, and me, a small-town Republican mayor. We wish to meet to discuss the health care crisis in rural America and the necessity of Medicaid expansion. On July 14th, I set out to walk nearly 300 miles from the small town of Belhaven, North Carolina to Washington, D.C. The purpose of this pilgrimage is to save the hospital in my community, to push for Medicaid expansion, and to raise awareness about rural health care crisis facing America. Belhaven is a tight-knit town set on a beautiful piece of land near the Pungo River, where it meets the Pamlico Sound in eastern North Carolina. I serve as mayor of this community, but more importantly, it's the place where I was born and raised. The seafood industry and nearby intracoastal waterway attract settlers to these shores, and the founders of our town had the foresight to build a hospital here shortly after World War II. For more than 65 years, this hospital has seen us through economic booms and busts, floods, hurricanes, and most recently, a string of violent tornadoes. In 2011, a large hospital conglomerate, Vidant Health, bought our facility promising, and actually they didn't buy it, they took it over, We gave them $1 million more in assets than liabilities. Barely 2 years ago, barely 2 years after they took it over, Vidant announced that it would close our hospital for good. I found out about Vidant's decision through the media. They didn't even bother to notify us. Vidant says that it had to shut our hospital because it lost money. Meanwhile, Vidant has earned more than $100 million in profits in each of the last several years and holds more than $550 million in reserves. The truth is that shuttering our hospital is part of a larger business plan to boost Vidant's revenues. It's obvious why the closing of our community hospital would concern me. One of my neighbors has already died due to a lack of nearby emergency services. But the story of Belhaven is bigger than the trials of a single small town. For several reasons, we believe our story carries national significance. First, we are not alone. Large systems are acquiring community hospitals across the nation. Oftentimes, these conglomerates aren't equipped to operate rural facilities. It's hard to operate a small hospital. The big companies like Duke and Vidant and some of these companies, and Duke's a good organization, not like Vidant, but those big organizations don't specialize in small hospitals. It takes a whole different mindset. When these small hospitals start running deficits, the big healthcare systems close them down and leave little towns stranded. These healthcare monopolies often have a stranglehold on broad geographic regions, so there is nothing the community can do. Because we didn't only lose our hospital and our healthcare, we also lost our future economically. People come to our area to retire. You don't go to our area that doesn't have a hospital. They have ripped the heart out of our community, health-wise and economically. Second, every state needs to close the insurance gap by accepting new federal Medicaid funds. The lack of coverage is especially acute in rural areas. Our healthcare providers need paying patients to stay afloat, and too many people, especially in rural communities, fall into the Medicaid gap that our states have created. I am a conservative Republican. I understand some of the suspicions political leaders in my parties have that Washington will not keep its promises, but those concerns do not trump the need to maintain health services in struggling communities. Rural citizens dying should not be the soldiers of the South's defiance for the new health care law. Although I am a Republican, we are working across ideological and racial lines to save our hospital and expand Medicaid. Although we often disagree, my brother in this battle, Reverend Barber, President NAACP, and Bob Zellner, I'll call him a radical. On the walk, I said, "You're just a flaming liberal, aren't you?" He said, "No, I'm a radical." He was an early organizer of SNCC, Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee, has walked with me every step of the way from Belhaven to Washington. And although the three of us have our differences, none of us can remain seated while bullies are picking on the little people. On July 28th, I will arrive in Washington with this message. It's time to put people at the center of our politics. It's time to act to save rural health care. And it's time to start working together like our lives depend on it. I hope you can take time in your busy schedule to meet with us and discuss ways that we can start building bridges across party lines and promote access to affordable health care across the nation. Sincerely, Adam O'Neill.
It's a win-win situation. Win-win situation, no downside.
Ladies like Portia Gibbs are dying all over this country right now. And you don't hear anything about it. It's not even on the local news.
That's right.
Nobody even knows. But the fact is it's going on. And our president needs to step up. We have been working on a model in Belhaven with medical experts from Campbell and Carolina, and also a accountable care organization legend already, as new as it is, Bo Bobbitt. We have put together a model with right-sizing the hospital and starting an ACO that can be profitable, has great promise. It looks like it'll work under the most conservative projections. So what we need is we need time and we need help. We can take this model that we're working on in Belhaven and transfer it across the country.
That's right.
We just need somebody in Washington to open the door up and let us talk to you, and we can get this done. So once again, I'd like to say thank you. This is Justin. This is the son of Portia Gibbs. We're so proud to have him, and we're so sorry about his loss. He is fighting his grief to come here today. I think he's obviously a hero.
Yes, sir.
So we appreciate you, Justin. We're sorry for your loss. But we're going to fight as hard as we can to keep this from not happening again. So I ask all of you, keep us in your prayers and start calling these congressmen and telling them to get off their tail and get this fixed.
I never thought I'd see a mayor carrying a Moses staff, but I guess it's fitting.